Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Canada West Football Show. And the Hardy Cup playoffs are here. As always, I'm joined by my main man, Matt Young from CTV Saskatoon and Canada West Football Analyst. Matt, thank you for joining me as always. How you doing?
Hey man, good. I'm excited. I mean, we're done the regular season. We find out where everyone's sort of settle up here, and now we're ready for the playoffs, and this is going to be good. And I think we got a couple of good playoff games coming up this weekend, so it should be fun.
Yes, and the other conferences around you sports were already getting a head start on us, and now we get to the action as well with the win or go home this weekend games. I'm really looking forward to a Saturday full of some Canadian football rivaling the CFL playoffs as well. It should be a really fun afternoon and day. So, Matt, as always, let's kind of get back into the regular season just a little bit. Talk about the last few games from the regular season last week. Obviously, we had implications on the line. All six teams were still alive going into last week. And obviously, we found out pretty quickly after game number one that the Regina Rams were going to represent that number four seed. They were able to get the victory over the University of Alberta Golden Bears, who put up a pretty good fight to start off. I believe they were up to about a 15 to 4 lead or something like that. And they ended up surrendering that away. And Regina has just kind of continued to build momentum. I know they've stumbled a little bit in the middle part of the season, but I feel like they've really kind of built from that starting strong their strong start, excuse me, to begin the year. So now, what were your kind of just your thoughts on Regina getting the victory over a banged up Alberta team?
I mean, I think for Regina, it shows their resiliency, obviously, to come back and beat a squad that, again, a lot of people thought at the start of the Canada West season was likely going to be in the Hardy Cup or challenge for the Hardy Cup. Rams team that was coming off a loss to the Saskatchewan Huskies earlier on 1 week ago. So they wanted to come back and obviously get a playoff spot. And I mean, after a 2-0 start, to kind of fall back behind and for Mark McConkey to rally the troops in the final week of the season and defeat the Alberta Golden Bears, I mean, is huge for them. It's a little disappointing for the Alberta Golden Bears. I think that was a team that a lot of people felt would do really really well, and a team that could challenge again for the Hardy Cup. But they had a big lead against Manitoba a couple of weeks ago, and the Bisons came back, and now to lose to the Regina Rams. I just think it summed up a season that just didn't really go their way out there in Manitoba, and that the tough injury to Eli Hillinger that also may have played a role in that as well. And I think for the Alberta Golden Bears, just nothing went right. As soon as they got momentum, they appeared to get snagged, and that's a good franchise. And I got to say props to Chris Morris, who obviously joining the Edmonton Elks. I don't know if you saw that news today, but he's well deserving of that, and great for him. He's a wonderful man to talk to, both on and off the football field. So tough one for the Alberta Golden Bears, but the Rams get it done, and they're headed to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of layers for the University of Alberta Golden Bears. I think of some injuries that those guys are banged up at certain positions. I think Jonathan Justini got banged up early on in the season and been kind of battling through it. I know he'd been in the lineup, Matthew Peterson as well, but just a tough year overall for Alberta, like you mentioned, coming into the year as Hardy Cup maybe favorites to represent the Canada West once again. They end up in, I believe, fifth place on the year. So. To talk about the Regina Rams a little bit more, Christian Contende. Where did he come from? 26 carries, I believe, for 228 yards and two touchdowns on the day. Was a phenomenal performance and really was the tip of the spear for the Regina Rams on that afternoon. Excuse me, I guess that evening last Friday. Matt, what were your thoughts on his performance? A really phenomenal performance, and I believe he was named Canada West Player of the Week, I believe, earlier in the week.
Well, Christian Katende is always someone who's been really good for the Regina Rams. I mean, he's dealt with some injury trouble, of course, and Marshall Erickson, has done a pretty good job so far this season too. So I mean, that just shows that the Regina Rams, have a pretty good running attack, and who. When they face the Manitoba Bisons, they're gonna have to find a way to shut that down, because the Bisons cannot let the Regina Rams just kind of run all over them like that. So that's huge for them, and that's big for the Rams knowing that he's back there.
Yeah, for sure. He was a treat to watch for sure in that game. I'm interested to see how they use him this upcoming week. So let's get on to the battle for first place between Manitoba and UBC, the last regular season game for one Brian Dobie in his illustrious here was a interesting one to say the least. University of Manitoba got out to a commanding lead. I think it was 31-3. UBC ends up clawing all the way back to a 31-24 deficit. And then from that point, Manitoba really just pulled away. Braden Stubbs, talking about running backs around the Canada West Conference, continues to have a phenomenal year, set a school record with, I think, 14 touchdowns and his career touchdowns as well. But he had 4 touchdowns in the afternoon, over 200 yards once again, and just really one of the workhorses around the youth sports football scene. So, Matt, what were your thoughts on the game and Manitoba just continuing to be Manitoba that we've seen this year?
I mean, 244 yards on the ground is incredible. I mean, in any game. And again, I mean, for Braden Stubbs, another big one against the UBC Thunderbirds and Manitoba to put up 51 points like that, I think proved that they're 7-1 for a reason. And that's because they can score and they also have a pretty good defense as well. Now, Garrett Rooker had a pretty good game on his own, couple of touchdowns, couple of interceptions. But look, I've said from the start of the year, if there's something going on in Manitoba, I think that's a very well-rounded team. Brian Dobie, that's a very well-coached team. And I think they're going to be very, very difficult. I think they've had their eyes set on this prize from the start of the season is to get to the Hardy Cup and to win it. And I felt at the start of the season that they were in the upper echelon of Canada West, and they proved it. They beat the UBC Thunderbirds. That's a huge win for them. And now all roads go through Manitoba to become Canada West champion.
Yeah, and I feel like they really have a great recipe to win come this time of year, playoff time. Weather starts to get a little bit bad. They have that run game to lean on. They don't necessarily have to drop back and pass. Like I think maybe UBC is a little bit more dependent on. I know they have Isaiah Knight, who's one of the more prominent backs in the conference as well. But you said it yourself. I believe Garrett Rooker had 400 yards on the day last week with Manitoba. Obviously, when you're down by so many points to 31-3 deficit, you're having to throw your way back into the game. I kind of wonder, and maybe we'll I kind of alluded to it on social media. Maybe did we see this as a Hardy Cup preview? UBC is going to have to stop, Saskatchewan and Riker Frank in that run game to even get to, Braden Stubbs. And, Braden Smith was another bright spot for him in the afternoon running the football. I believe he had 3 carries for 90 yards. The obviously one long carry for 50 yards and a touchdown. I believe he's a track athlete, kind of a dynamic player that they can insert into the lineup as well and be a weapon for Manitoba. It was just a really treat to watch Manitoba and just cap off the year right, winning their last regular season game at home. I'm really excited to see how they come out and perform in playoff time when it's win it or go home, and they have to kind of write their story and make sure they finish it off the right way. So, Matt, is there any other final thoughts UBC Manitoba? I'm sure we'll get into maybe a little bit of talk about them down the line here and their games upcoming. But anything else when it comes to this matchup specifically?
Well, I think what it shows is Manitoba can do it on both sides of the ball, and they can run the ball and they can pass the ball on offense, and they will. And I think that 51 points on that UBC Thunderbird team is pretty good. And I think Manitoba is a number one for a reason. And I mean, the Regina Rams are going to have their hands full with them, and the Saskatchewan Huskies are going to have to come up big against UBC. But big win for Manitoba, and they solidify first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last matchup of the weekend didn't really have much to decide after the Friday night outcome. Saskatchewan was able to pull out the victory over Calgary, 16-11, and was led once again by Riker Frank, Daniel Weed, that have been doing that all year long, both able to chip in with touchdowns. I believe Riker Frank was over 100 yards. Daniel Weed, I think, was just shy. But those two continuing to be leaders on the offensive side, and I would imagine that locker room. But Calgary, I would imagine, would probably be a little bit more defeated going into that game after they know not a lot to play for. Obviously, you're wanting to end the season on a positive note, but probably a little bit of a tough blow going into that game that there's no shot at playoffs in the back of your mind, and it's a little bit, I feel like, tough to probably get up for a game like that. But Matt, any other thoughts on this one?
Well, it was essentially, a meaningless game in the standings because by then the playoffs had been decided. You knew that Saskatchewan was getting third place. So, I mean, I would say this that the Saskatchewan Huskies, I think, are glad that they got out of that game and got away with a win and go into the playoffs on a high note, which is important. Calgary's going to have to obviously regroup over the offseason and try and come back next year. But I mean, Riker Frank again, putting up a program high 21st touchdown, a record there, and he has a chance to try and break more records. So number 34 is going to be tough to stop, and that Saskatchewan offense is very high powered. And particularly Saskatchewan, UBC, and Manitoba have very good offenses. It's going to be which defense can come up in the playoffs and secure a win. Remember, Saskatchewan was the only team to defeat the Manitoba Bisons this season, and so if they do meet in the Hardy Cup, if Saskatchewan gets past UBC and faces Manitoba, I'm interested to see how Brian Dobie would game plan for that.
Yeah, very interesting one. Saskatchewan, I think, is a very dangerous team in that 3 seed, going on the road, obviously not being able to host a game, but the way they're able to run the football with Riker Frank, and they're able to be an elite passing team. I remind folks, I know they did it very quietly, but Daniel Wee was the Triple Crown winner in the Canada West this year, most receptions, most yards, and most touchdowns. And then you look at Anton Amory, our quarterback, led the conference in yards and touchdowns. With 11 passing touchdowns. I think he was just over 2,000 passing yards in the regular season. They're a very dynamic offense to go up against, and I think they'll be able to travel well. And what I mean by that is in the elements. If it is maybe a rainy afternoon here on the West Coast, or if it's they get to a Manitoba down the road, I think they're able to win in very many different ways on offense and be able to be dangerous passing or running. So. Matt, is any other thoughts? Should we leave the regular season in the past?
Let's talk some playoff football, baby. I'm excited. Let's get going.
Let's do it. That reminds me, though, Matt, you need congratulations. Matt Young is the champion of this year's first inaugural Canada West weekly picks. Matt with a record of 15-9, the champ.
Yeah.
How does it feel, Matt?
It feels good. I wish they were lottery numbers that I could predict, but you know what? Hey, it's been fun working with you guys and picking some games, and can't win them all. It was a tough start to a lot of guys this season, but you know what? It's unpredictable, and that's what makes Canada West so fun. So and it's tough on the playoffs. You have to think long and hard about those, but it'll be exciting coming this weekend.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what a remarkable turnaround for not only you, but I think the rest of us as well. What a terrible start for the crew. I believe we creeped around maybe 0-9 or something around there. The first 3 weeks were very tough, but like I mentioned, you finishing 15-9, myself in second at 14-10, Gord 13-11, and then Connor at 12-12, cracks 500. So we were all very close, and it came within a few games, but ultimately Matt has the title of saying regular season champion for now, I guess, until next season, Matt, we will say.
There you go.
But
there you go.
Into it. Some playoff football, Hardy Cup playoffs start this Saturday with the Regina Rams, Manitoba Bisons. Matt, let's hear your thoughts on this one. Obviously, it's going to be David versus Goliath story, but Regina, I feel like, is a nice festy team that could make things interesting. What are your thoughts on the matchup between Regina and Manitoba?
Well, I think for the Regina Rams, that's going to be two big keys. One, they've got to be able to move the ball on offense and hold on to the ball on offense. They've had trouble in a number of games so far this season where they've had the ball and then they turn it over or throw an interception or something like that. So they've got to make sure that offense, they're not turning over the football. They got to make sure that they're moving the football well, and that they're taking time off the clock. And their offensive line has to do a pretty good job. They got to make sure that Noah Pelche has time and Christian Katende has holes to run through to gallop for some yards. So for the Regina Rams, that's going to be their key for them. And they can't take a lot of penalties either. The other one is for the Manitoba Bisons. This is a pretty well-rounded team, and they've got to avoid letting happen to them what happened against the Saskatchewan Huskies. If the Regina Rams can somehow put some touchdowns on the board early, it kind of puts Manitoba behind the 8 ball a little bit. So, I mean, I expect to see a lot of Braden Stubbs. I expect to see Jackson Tuszynski not be afraid to run the football if he needs to. And I think really Manitoba, the pieces are there. Regina's the pieces are there too, but there's been and so many times this season where late in football games, they've had trouble with turnovers and things like that. So Mark McConkey is very creative. He's a very good coach, and he can get his guys going certainly. And guys like Rylan Sokol and Deshaun Mims and Nicholas Sirleaf, they got to be there. They got to be able to catch a ball when it's a 50-50 ball and it's put up there for them. And on the other side, AK Kasama's got to have a pretty good game. So we've seen 4 beat 1 before. It doesn't happen too often. They're going into Winnipeg where the Manitoba Bisons have a lot of confidence, and they're gonna, I think, not just be playing for a chance to play in the Hardy Cup, but they're really playing for Brian Dobie out there. And I think for the Regina Rams, they gotta play a pretty good football game if they're going to beat this Manitoba team.
Yeah, taking nothing away from Regina, I feel like in a way this is already a successful season in a way for Regina, kind of getting into the playoffs, building something here for some foundational stability. Where I feel like Manitoba's and their mindset has been championship since they've heard about Brian Dobie, and even before that, I'm sure. But if there was a way for Regina to, I feel like pull something off, a crazy comeback like you mentioned, a 4 taking down the 1 seed, I think they need to really start fast and kind of, don't be afraid to, pull out a Regina Rams special, whatever Darren Dupont dubbed the pass to Noah Pelche a few weeks ago. Come up with something creative, a trick play or something like that to, get the guys energized and believing in it, when they hear that play call come in the huddle, that coach is kind of a little bit loose and he believes in them to execute in this play call. And I think if they're able to do that, start a little bit fast, like you mentioned, if they're able to get up, a couple of touchdowns on Manitoba, kind of puts them a little bit, not maybe behind the 8 ball, but a little bit uncomfortable, in their regular game script on a regular basis. So, like I said, I think all of our monies are behind Manitoba, or maybe I shouldn't say money, but all our picks are behind Manitoba this week. But I wouldn't be surprised if Regina was able to make at least things interesting, where it's a little bit close and it's an exciting one to watch from a fan perspective on Saturday.
I mean, yeah, I think for the Regina Rams, their defense has to hold. Cameron Ma and the Sombach brothers, they've got to do a good job, and they got to find a way to create turnovers. That's what the Huskies did against the Manitoba Bisons. That's how they beat them, and they didn't allow Braden Stubbs to get going at all when Manitoba was in Saskatoon, and that's what the Rams are going to have to do, and they've proven they can do it. Their defense many times has kept them in games, but their offense has got to make sure that it's more efficient. And if they can do that, they can beat the Manitoba Bisons.
Yeah, and talking about the fast start, as I say, Regina's already feel like it's a successful season. On the flip side, Regina could also come in very loose, playing with house money, and buy into, we're the 4th seed, nobody's gonna believe in us. Let's just go in and play our best ball. And Manitoba is the one that's a little bit tense and a little bit tight going in the game because of all the expectations are on them. So it could be an interesting one. Who knows? I'm gonna ride with what's going on in Manitoba this year because something's going on special. Like I agree with you. But let's get on to the last game, the next game, Matt. Um, Saskatchewan UBC. I think this is going to be a very, very fun one to watch. I'm a little bit bummed that the kind of timing with the UBC Saskatchewan game, excuse me, the BC Lions Saskatchewan game is what I mean. The kickoff there and kind of, I know I believe that one kicked off, I think, 4 o'clock our time, so they won't kind of overlap too much, but still, would like to be paying attention to just the one game instead of kind of back and forth. What are your thoughts on this one, Matt?
Well, these are pretty evenly matched teams. I think the Saskatchewan Huskies are a very, very good number 3 seed and could probably be a number 2 seed maybe if there was one more week left in the season for them to string together another win. I look at the Huskies as a team that likes to play hard. They like to play physical. Scott Flory likes his guys to play physical, and this is a team that is going to have a lot of weapons with Daniel Weeb on offense and Jesse Kuntz and Dawson Lenny, who's very, very fast, and Riker Frank. And I expect that UBC will probably try and shut down that run game if they can right away. The problem is Anton Amadroud has such a strong arm. He can really field, and he likes to do that. So you know what, that Husky squad, they like to play physical, and UBC is going to have to match the physicality with them. On the other side, you have Isaiah Knight, who can also run the ball obviously quite well, and you have Garrett Rooker. And I think that these two teams are so evenly matched. It's very, very, very close. It's very, very difficult to pick a winner. I have the Huskies just because they have so much momentum coming in. They got the winning streak going. Riker Frank is in the record books looking for a little bit more, and so I have the Huskies just winning this one by 1 or 2 points, maybe a rouge, maybe a field goal. But that's going to be a good game out in Vancouver, and I'm going to be excited to watch that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a phenomenal game. I'm very excited for this one. Ultimately, I'm going the other way. I think it's hard to kind of argue against your points and why you think and believe in Saskatchewan. I ultimately think Saskatchewan has some veterans on this team, but I think it was talked about a little bit, maybe too much. I think to begin the year of Theo and Gio leaving, but a lot of this roster on UBC is returning from last year's team, has that kind of experience in these playoff situations now in these tighter ball games where they were in close game to Manitoba last year. They were losing to University of Alberta before the fumble, and they were able to make some magic there. So I think being in these tighter games, they won't be more prominent to make a mistake or something like that, and they'll be they'll be more likely to rise to the occasion. So that's why I think I have UBC. They're able to maybe get a last minute drive, get into Flannery Fleck range, and he's able to knock home a field goal. I think the good thing for both sides is that they have a trustworthy kicker, and they're able to get in within field goal range and have either a kicker trot out for a game winning field goal. It looks for as of now that there shouldn't be any West Coast rain on Saturday, like we've seen here in the last few weeks in UBC games. But very very tough one to kind of pick. Ultimately, I'm gonna go with UBC and kind of I feel like what they built here in the last few years in their roster. I think even though it's tough to kind of say after a week they surrendered 51 points. I think that defense is a lot better than giving up 51 points to University of Manitoba. And I think they'll be determined and very motivated to show up and kind of you know quiet or kind of maybe contain Daniel Weave and Riker Frank, the two catalysts for Saskatchewan. So it's going to be a fun one, Matt. I could definitely see this one going either way, opposed to maybe the first one. I'm really looking forward to watching this one on Saturday. But any other thoughts, Matt? Before a couple other questions here before we get out of here.
I mean, no, I'm ready to go. I mean, it's playoff time. This is it. This is what you work hard for. This is why you lift those weights. This is why you do those extra sprints. And now it's go time. Win or go home. No margin of error really for anybody here. These are going to be two great games, and I'm excited to watch them.
Yes, indeed. So, lastly, Matt, I wanted to get your opinion. I know you mentioned it earlier in the show about Chris Morris and him moving on to the Edmonton Elks president slash CEO role. Obviously, longtime Edmonton, or former Edmonton Eskimo, three-time Grey Cup champion, had kind of, turned around this program a little bit. Obviously, they'd struggled. His record, maybe from the outside perspective, doesn't look great. But these last 2 years, the last few years, I should say, have been really, fun. I feel like for that community, for that fan base, and have been some fun football to watch. And some of these guys that have, you know, almost now on a yearly basis, you're hearing about some guys that are, University of Alberta products getting into, getting invited into combines and stuff like that, being prospects into the CFL. What do you got to say about what Chris Morris has built in the University of Alberta and then this opportunity now for him with Edmonton Elks?
Well, he's been rewarded because he has great leadership and because he works hard. Guys like Chris Morris and anybody really in those roles. When you look at a lot of the coaches across Canada West, these are not 9 to 5 jobs. These guys are working all day long, and they put in a lot of time. They give up their weekends. They give up a lot of their weeknights, and it's not easy. And really, congrats to him, and he deserves it. And he's helped. He's been through that program for the good times, and he's been through that program during the tough times, and he stuck with it. And I'm real proud of him. And I was happy to see some of the success that he had last season, getting to the Hardy Cup. It didn't quite work for him this year, but he's proven that he definitely has the leadership skills and can build good relationships and can get guys going. And I think the Edmonton Elks are going to be really lucky to have him. And I'm excited to see what kind of stamp he puts on that organization. But certainly he's done well for the University of Alberta Golden Bears and has a lot to be proud of. And And the organization obviously very lucky to have Chris Morris. I mean, obviously he's moving on to the Edmonton Elks, but he's proven himself to be someone who's deserving of that opportunity in the CFL.
And lastly, Matt, kind of, if there's anything that comes to mind, what other possibilities do you think this could possibly open up for, youth sports coaches? We talked about on the weekly show last night that, what if, maybe because obviously he'll, have some say in this decision now with the Edmonton Elks needing a head coach and GM still. Obviously, they could bring back G-Roy and Jarius, but what if, he plucks somebody from the youth sports scene to, be his head coach or whatever? But what do you think this could do for, youth sports and coaches continuing to get more opportunities, in some of these different roles in the CFL?
Well, I'd like to see more youth sports coaches at the CFL level. I think that they can definitely do it. It's a matter of there's a whole bunch of things that have to come together, right? I mean, youth sports coaches are more than just coaches; they're a part of the faculty at the school that they're coaching at, oftentimes. So, but I think it's good. I think it shows that there's some great leadership in youth sports at different levels within sort of that football umbrella, if you will. And I think that it sort of sends a message out there that youth sports should be considered not just for players, but for personnel and sort of front office positions as well for different CFL teams around the league.
Okay, I lied, Matt. One last question. I know it's super early, it just happened, but would you have any idea who might be some possible candidates to maybe step in the University of Alberta at the head coach position?
Well, I think it's tough to say right now. I mean, you could promote from within if you wanted to. So, do you look at the current offensive coordinator, or do you go outside? And those are discussions that are going to happen over the next number of months. And obviously, they'll have to make a decision. I mean, Calgary just kind of went through that process when Ryan Sheehan took over. So I'm excited to see who they get. I mean, is there a current coach in another organization that they can bring in? I think those are discussions that the Alberta Golden Bears will have over the next little while, and I'm confident they'll bring in somebody who can pick up right where Mr. Morris left off.
Yeah, well said. Looking forward to it. A lot of decisions for Alberta, a lot of decisions for the Edmonton Elks as well coming up. So, fun time of year, Matt. Like I said, Saturday, I am very, very excited. Obviously, Grey Cup playoffs kicking off as well as the Hardy Cup playoffs. Joining the party with U Sports and all their playoffs kicking off last week. Should be a really fun weekend of Canadian football. Although it is coming to an end, there is a little bit of a bittersweet to that excitement with playoff football. That means only a few weeks, and for a lot of these teams, they could be playing their last games of the year. So, Matt, thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate you for joining me and taking out some of your time out of your day. Everybody, we will be back for one last Canada West football show next week to preview the Hardy Cup final. Who might it be? We will see on Saturday. Until then, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.